everyone, welcome to Morning Laziness. This is Nilima Kiyos, and today we are bringing to you an interview session with Ms. Abby Gardner. Morning Laziness is an online magazine dedicated to women. It showcases various articles, personal life stories, and interview sessions on different matters concerning women. And today our interviewee, Ms. Abby, happens to be a renowned award-winning writer, editor, as well as the host of the podcast We Have Notes. So let us welcome our interviewee. Hello, Abby.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here on board with Morning Laziness. So how do you normally begin your morning?
I normally begin my morning. I've started to become like a morning person, which I didn't used to be for a long time. So I get up, brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, then I make a cup of hot water with lemon. I boil some water. And then I take it and I get back into bed and I get on my phone, which is maybe not like the best thing to do. But these days, I also have the TV on. I'm like a person who does a lot of things at once, which I think is a skill and a curse. But now I start with my word games. Like that's what I do first before I even get on any social media. I do my Wordle. And then I do a few variations of Wordle. I don't know if any of y'all play so Wordle is this the popular word game that swept the globe that now has been purchased by the New York Times, but you can play for free. And it's guess it. You have 6 guesses to guess a word and you get to match the letters. And then there are variations on it. So I am a big pop culture person. So I play one. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan too. So I play one called Taylordle. It's the same thing as Wordle, but just words from the Taylor Swift universe. I'm also a huge Harry Styles fan, so I play one called Wordlery, which is the same thing, but in Harry Styles verse. And then I added a new one, which is not words, it's called Hurdle. And it's basically name that tune. And you get little snippets of a song, and with each guess, if you don't get it on the first guess, you get a little bit more of the song until you get the song. And then I watch the Today Show, or I watch sometimes I watch one of my shows when and just like that, the Sex and the City kind of revisit was on, I would watch it came out on Thursday morning, so I would watch it at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's kind of how I start my day. And then I work from bed a little bit sometimes, and then I try to get up and work out and then get going with my day.
That sounds great. And you sound quite a gamer.
I don't know. Sometimes I think I should slow it down in the morning. I think I'm going to try to get back into doing some thing as called morning pages. It's part of the artist's way, and kind of just free writing. You freehand write 3 pages every morning. So I think I'm going to try to get to that, be a little more zen in the morning instead of already on the internet and watching 7 shows, but I am who I am.
Right. So what made you smile today?
What made me smile today? Well, I live in the Midwest in the United States, and it is finally kind of springtime weather. So I was able to take a walk, a morning walk at 8 a.m. in just a sweatshirt. And that made me not have to bundle up and put a coat on. That made me happy. And while when I would take walks, which became kind of a thing. I mean, everybody else, a lot of people in the pandemic, you could just go take a walk as one way to get out of the house. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts called Who Weekly, and something made me laugh so hard. And I was one of those people walking down the street with my AirPods in, playing to myself. I feel the weather made me smile first and foremost.
That sounds great. Now, tell us about your podcast, We Have Notes. How often do you write scripts for the podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast is, I started it almost a year ago. So last April, it was a spinoff of, I've had a newsletter for about 5 years that lives on Substack of the same name called We Have Notes. And it's really just all things pop culture, all the things I'm obsessed with. I say the podcast is for the pop culture obsessed and the people who love them. So each week it comes out on Thursdays. I usually have a guest on, one of my friends, someone I'm interested, a writer I like, or I had a producer from Station 11, one of my favorite shows, on to kind of talk about the things I'm obsessed with, what I'm watching, what I'm reading, of the moment. And also sometimes we do a little retro, like I am a straight up Gen Xer, so I love to talk about stuff from the 90s, which happens to be very popular again. And as for scripts, so I jot down notes during the week for both the newsletter, like literally notes, during the week for the newsletter and for the podcast, but it's a really free form conversation. It's really conversational, and I kind of just let it go where it goes. I often say I run a very loose ship. So I kind of have notes and a bit of an outline, but and I do write the intros for my guests. I do write those down because I want to make sure I like get those right. But I don't really script it, which, you know, for better or for worse, I don't know. I think it's a good thing. And also I'm like, I can go off the rails, but I think that's part of the charm of the show, is that it feels like you're just hanging out with me and my friends, and hopefully you feel like you're hanging out with your friends, just over drinks, over brunch, over coffee, just chatting about what's on your mind, what you're into, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that's the energy it brings. That's the energy I bring to it. So I hope that's what comes off from it, because it's all things I just love and am passionate about, and I just want to talk about all the time. And they can be things that other people might think are silly. I don't think they're silly. I don't think fandom or like being really into a show or a celeb or a book is silly. So I like that it's a space to just talk about all that stuff.
Right. And you know, it's true, like anchoring a podcast without a script, it helps to keep that originality alive throughout the show.
Yeah, it's really fun, and just like let it go. And then if we need to edit it down a little bit, like that's fine. But really, it's a really free-flowing conversation, and that's kind of how my brain works. And so it kind of translates into the show. I hope that's what people get.
Right. Now, as a pop culture guru, what are your thoughts on the challenges women normally face in the entertainment industry?
Well, I think as much as like there, you know, and for women in any industry, and I think we all know this, there has been much progress, and there is still much progress to be made. I think we are seeing, like, I love that we are seeing many more different kinds of stories about women, and it doesn't just have to be like this kind of story. Like we are like all humans, complex, multi-layered, sometimes great, sometimes bad, you know, and you don't have to just be an anti-hero. You can just be a complex person who has many different feelings and many different desires. And I think we're seeing more stories like that, but I still get disheartened. Like recently, a show that I love very much is The Babysitter's Club on Netflix, which is obviously targeted at like a younger audience in some ways, but not, because I think so many of us of many generations grew up reading, a lot of people grew up reading the Babysitter's Club books. They're really beloved. And the show was so well done. It was really updated in a way that I thought made it more modern and more inclusive and more diverse. And I read a piece with the showrunner, Rachel Schukert, in Vulture yesterday, and she was talking about how there aren't really shows for this age group of young women. Like they're kind of asked to go from, like she said, and this is, I'm paraphrasing her quote, but going from Doc McStuffins to Euphoria. And like, where is that space in the middle where you are like 11, 12, 13, 14, like figuring out your spot in this world and not having it always have to be reflected by like how someone sees you, or like these girls figuring out friendship together and conflicts together. And I thought that was really poignant, and I hadn't really thought about it that way. And so I think there's still just so much space. And she was talking about how do things get targeted in the Netflix algorithm, and who even knew this show was here? Like, because sometimes if something doesn't pop on your homepage on any platform, you might not know that it even exists. And so I think we just need to keep doing more and more content about all different kinds of girls and women and all, you know, any gender. Like, I think that age group, I think anybody suffers in that age group. There's probably not a lot of great, you know, there's a lot of great books. There hasn't been a lot of great television in that space for a while. But I also love seeing shows like Never Have I Ever from Mindy Kaling, which is telling like a different kind of teen girl story than we've heard before. Like there is more. I just think there's so much more to be done. And hopefully if we have more different kinds of people in the executive suites making those decisions that aren't just old white dudes, then hopefully we'll start to see even more different kinds of content. So that's my hope. But I do get excited whenever I do see something that I'm like, oh my gosh, even 6 years ago, we wouldn't have had this show, and that's exciting. We just need more things for all, there's so many different kinds of people that we need all these different kinds of stories. So.
Right. And now the pandemic has been disturbing many industries. I mean, it has, and it's continuing the influence over many industries, notably the entertainment industry, for example. So how would you like to comment upon the recent choice or decision taken by the renowned actress, Miss Sandra Bullock, on taking a break from her career?
Yeah, well, I think, Sandra's been, first of all, she's one of my favorite actresses. And I think she's one of our great celebrities. She is so charming and fun and relatable. And even though she's like a glamorous, beautiful, wealthy movie star, there's something like very, very relatable about Sandra Bullock. I think it's a huge part of her charm. And she seems like someone you just like really want to hang out with. But I think, she has been doing press for her new movie, Lost City, which I'm so excited about. And she said she really just wants to be like home with her kids and like doing that part of her life. And I think while we might not all be movie stars and we might not all have the option, most of us don't have the option to say like, I'm not going to work for a little while. That isn't, but I think the sentiment is very relatable. And I think that the pandemic, first of all, it made movie sets and not just, this is not just for the movie stars, like this is everybody who's working on that set, right? Like it has become a lot more complex and they had to try to keep people safe while they could still do their jobs and be employed. But it does add a lot of layers of complexity to the logistics. And I do think that a lot of people over the past 2 years have started to think about like reevaluating their priorities and like how they spend their time. And for Sandra, she's expressed that as like, I want to, she's got kids at an age that they're probably doing tons of activities. She, when you do a movie, you might be away from your home. I mean, even if the kids come with you, like in a location for 6 months, like that's a lifestyle that a lot of us don't understand. And of course it comes with a lot of perks when you're the star, but I think we all were like, wait, how am I spending my time? And how do I want to be spending my time? And when I wasn't able to do so many of the things that I wanted to do, like, how can I reprioritize? For me, I was like, okay, I wanted, of course, not being able to travel made me want to travel more, but also just being like, I don't want to miss out on the things I love. And if whatever those things are, and however you're able to kind of restructure your life, I think everybody has done a little bit of that, whether you're, I don't have children, but that doesn't mean I don't want to spend more time with other people in my family or my nephews, or, like we all have ways that we reacted to kind of being locked down and also having so much stripped away. It made you have to face like, okay, so what really is important to me? Like what, if I really could only do 3 things, like what would I want to do? And I think to me, that's very relatable about what she's saying. Again, we can't all just say like, I'm not going to work for a year. Like that's not probably feasible for most of us, but I think we all can make like small shifts and adjustments. And a lot of us have to find more balance and just whatever brings you happiness.
Right. So how did the pandemic exactly affect your routine, your work routine, in fact?
Well, I will say I was a freelance writer working on various jobs. I got really nervous at first because I was like, are all my freelance jobs going to go away? It was so uncertain. I was very lucky that they did not. And I also already worked from home. So I've for much of my life worked in an office, but I had not been working in an office. I had been working from home already. So I didn't have personally as much of an adjustment on that front. And I lived by myself. So I didn't have other people small children I had to take care of, online school that I had to deal with. Like I was really lucky, but I did have, other things, that I used to do, didn't do anymore. So what I really tried to do is like structure my day, and I would really try to take breaks and take walks, like I was saying. And I tried to find like an end point to my day too, because that's another thing, pandemic or not, as a freelancer, you could just be working all the time. There's always something to do when you're working for yourself. And also when you're, in an office at this point, we're all connected all the time on our phones, on our laptops. So really trying to find like, okay, you're going to take a break in the middle of the day and go on a walk, or then you're going to be done at this time and you're going to make dinner, and then that's going to be your evening. So that to really kind of still structure the day, even though it felt like every day was just the same and you weren't going anywhere, and weekends didn't even really feel like weekends. I tried to make I had like a standing 5 p.m. FaceTime date with one of my friends, and we would like have a glass on Fridays, and we would have a glass of wine together, like kind of trying to find structure when it felt like there was no structure. But I definitely didn't always succeed at that. And certainly for a while, and kind of like the first fall, I think I kind of got burned out, and then kind of reevaluated and tried to find new ways to balance. But I'm always a work in progress. I think we all are. There's no such thing as perfect balance. There's no such thing as balance. You just try to do the best you can.
Right. Now, what were some challenges you faced while emerging as a writer, and what exactly enchanted you towards the pen?
Well, I've been a bookworm my whole life. I was the kid that just had her nose in a book all the time. I used to be able to read even in the car. I can't imagine reading in a car now. I get so car sick. But as a kid, I was just in the back seat, or when we would go on, it's kind of spring break season here in the US, lots of kids, families are going on spring break. I would go to the library and pick out 12 books for 6 days. I was always reading. So words, I loved words. I loved and then as I got a little older, I loved magazines, and I was obsessed with women's magazines, fashion magazines. I was a teenager before the internet was a place where you read things. So I just always had a thing for the written word. And then I was an English major in college. I loved writing papers. I loved reading and analyzing books and literature and poetry. Poetry I'm not as great at, but even analyzing. But so I really wanted to go to New York, and I wanted to work in a magazine. I want to be a writer at a magazine. So I did push through and make that happen. I think it's hard. It's not like it's easier now, but there are different ways to get your writing out that I think are so cool. And I'm in a way jealous that 17-year-old me didn't have Tumblr, or other ways to kind of put your stuff out into the world, which is awesome. And I love that for everybody, any burgeoning writer, young or at any age. But I wish I could have had a blog in college. That would have been so cool. The internet existed, but not people weren't, there weren't blogs yet. But I think it's challenging. I think the thing about writing, and it always happens to me no matter how old I get, is there will always be points where you're I'm terrible at this. No one will ever want to read this. What am I doing? I can't believe this is garbage. I can't write. I think any writer faces that. And I know the most successful New York Times bestselling, novelists will tell you that they have those moments. And so it's just not giving up in those moments, I think, is so important. And talk to someone who will be no, guess what? You don't suck. Maybe this isn't your best day. And maybe it is, because sometimes I'll write something and I'll think it's great. And an editor will be let's rearrange this whole thing. And then sometimes I'll be they're going to hate this. And then we love it. I didn't mean to change too much. It's hard to have perspective on yourself, but just knowing that it's always a process, and that I've gotten better about rejection, though it never feels good. Doesn't feel great ever. But I think what I've also come to as I've gotten older is I think I was, for a long time when I was younger, and sometimes this matters because you need to write in the style of the place that's hiring you, right? Like you can't always just go off and do your own thing if you're writing for a certain magazine or whatever. But I have found that the more I lean into my truly authentic voice, like what is uniquely me, the better the work is. And I think the more responses I will get to it. And it might not be for everybody, and that's fine. But I think I spent a long time when I was younger trying to be like, well, I think they want me to be like this. And I think they want me to be like this. And I wish younger me would have just been a little more free and a little more herself. So I think that was a struggle. Even as I had success, I'm like, I wish I could go back and do that a little differently. So, but it's an ever, and again, like tomorrow I might be like, I hate writing, I quit. Like, it's writing is hard. Writing is really hard, and it's solitary and it's lonely. So the more you can kind of have, if you're working on like a project that isn't necessarily, if you have a book project that you haven't sold or whatever, like having a friend you can bounce stuff off of, and knowing that every person needs a great editor. Editors are a gift, and great editors are a real gift. And I've learned a lot in terms of editing people myself, but also being edited. So I love a great editor.
Right. And oh my God, I can relate so many things from your journey as a writer, like so many things, and like what I'm going through right now. So yeah, it was quite relatable. And I hope so. It will be the same for the listeners as well. Now, lastly, what do you think this world needs the most?
Oh, that's a good question. So many things, right? But I think when I think about boiling it down to a couple things, I think what I get frustrated about sometimes, and I think it's, the internet has broken my brain, just like it's broken everybody's brain to some extent. Any of us who spend a lot of time online, right? And I think there's a couple of things. I think critical thinking sometimes goes out the window. Like, let's use our critical thinking caps, like let's not snap, there's often, especially online, like you can be rewarded for like snap judgment or snap quip about something, and like just taking a step back and using our critical thinking skills and appreciating that, whether it's something a very important global issue or like a conversation about a television show on Hulu or whatever, that there is nuance and there should be nuance to conversations. So I think critical think, and then I think kindness, like just kindness to other people, kindness to ourselves, like approaching things with kindness and critical thinking, I think would help a lot in the world.
Right. So on that note, we come to the end of this interview session. Thank you so much for joining us today. We truly appreciate your time. And thank you, audience. Hope you had a great time with us today.